Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Franchise Growth Show. I'm Joe Carter, founder of the Twin Flame Group and partner with the Franchise Consulting Company. And today we are talking about something that most franchise brands get wrong. They chase sales before they build systems. But here's the catch. Franchise sales isn't a marketing problem. It's an infrastructure problem. Too many founders think more leads will just fix slow growth. But the truth is, if your back end is weak, more leads will just expose the cracks. Revenue isn't value, and franchise agreements signed without structure, that's just delayed chaos. Today, I've got Patti Rother on the show. She's the founder and CEO of Root and Rise Franchise Development and specializes in building an engine behind franchise growth, including sales systems, CRM architecture, AI-backed dashboards, broker alignment, all the stuff that buyers actually care about. So if you're serious about scaling without burning out your team or discounting your valuation, this episode is for you. But before we dive in, quick shout out to our sponsor. Today's episode is brought to you by Dallas-Fort Worth Pierce Bespoke. They are the go-to clothier for founders and executives who understand that presence is a part of performance. You've built the brand, now build your look. They will craft custom tailored suits for you and your team to drive both performance and perspective. But let's dive right into it first and foremost. Patti, thank you so much and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to have this conversation and talk about what I'm really passionate about, which is franchise sales engines.
I love it. I can't wait to dive into it. I've been looking forward to this one as well. For those on the audience that do not know yet, what does Root and Rise actually do and what problem are you solving within the franchise sales and development space?
Yeah, so we really built out Root and Rise to truly build out franchise foundations that actually support long-term growth. It's not hype growth. It's not vanity metrics. It's real, durable, scalable, inevitable growth that brands can rely on years after we're done working with them. So the idea was really that you shouldn't have to rely on human heroics or just a really amazing salesperson to push through and kind of grit their way through. Most brands need a true foundation, the roots, if you will, and a true sales engine that works despite who's running it.
Love this. You said so many buzzwords that I say to my clients all the time. I absolutely love it. Build it around the system, because if the founder or the owner is the rainmaker, the one that makes it all happen, that's not a system. That is just inevitably scale deterioration. So I love it. So in reference to how you do it, what do you typically do when you first kind of onboard a client with your team?
Yeah. So what I have found time and time again, stepping into brands as either the lead salesperson, stepping into brands as a president, is that oftentimes a lot of the foundational work was just never done. Whether it was a CEO or a founder or somebody running sales for a while, they were chasing the closed deal and they weren't really thinking about the infrastructure to put down. My background stems from operations. I worked for franchisees for a long time in their restaurants. And so the lens that I bring to sales is a little bit different. And I think that's why what we're building at Root and Rise is different. But essentially what we do is during the first 90 days, we do something called the Franchise Foundations. And we build every single piece of asset, collateral, technology, CRM, automation, go-to-market strategy, personas, literally anything and everything that you would need to do sales successfully. If you had someone with my background and experience to help you do it from day one, even if brands have some of that built out, we're looking at it from a new lens based on the strategy that we've worked on together. So oftentimes brands might have a really great, intro webinar that they love to show people as part of their sales process, but they've never thought about who makes the best franchisee in their system, who are they talking to, how do you make them the hero of the story and really change the language that you're using either in the deck or that you're talking over to speak directly to that person and help you make a no just as easy as a yes. So throughout the sales process, how are we weeding out the people that really won't be the most successful, that aren't a great cultural match, and utilizing kind of what we're building to help with that as well. So we focus first 90 days really on that foundational work. And one of the coolest things about what we're doing is that my co-founders, Willem and Islam are engineers by trade. They're AI developers. And so a lot of the technology that we're building is built for the brand itself on an infrastructure of Zoho One. And it's all essentially proprietary to that brand. And it's something that we leave behind. So we also knew going into this that we never wanted to exist in a silo. We want everything that we build and do to be something that outlasts us and stays with the brand, because I don't want them to be successful only when they work with us. I want them to be successful long after we're gone. So we do franchise foundations. Then we get into true sales acceleration. We embed as your sales team. We stay with you as long as needed to really get to that predictable growth. And then you're left behind with this incredible system that outlasts us, that we help maintain on your behalf. So everything from reporting and dashboards and, the AI automations and the whole CRM engine, we're still in the background making sure that it's working and functional and there's no bugs and you've got a great system.
You are speaking my language right now. Traditionally, what I've seen, having dealt with, 5,000 different franchise brands at this point, there's traditionally some level of lack of documented process, no consistent follow-up cadence, a CRM system that is not very good and belongs in the junk drawer, and little to no accountability rhythm. And you fix that in what sounds like 90 days or less. Is that fair?
Yeah. And what's really cool about what we're doing is we're also planning to not be with you the whole time, right? Like, I don't want to be working with a brand for 4 or 5 years. That's not the goal. The goal is that we are so successful that you outgrow us and outgrow the need for us to be in place. And in those first 90 days, we're also building all of the offboarding, all of the training materials, the full documentation of the sales process, of the automations, in anticipation of spending our last 90 days together, helping you recruit somebody, helping you train that person on all the systems we built so that it's a fully seamless transition out. And again, I've just seen so many brands left hanging after they're with either a consultant or franchise sales organization where it all existed in a silo and they don't have access to anything that was done for them. I knew 100% that's not what we were going to build. We were going to build something that lasts long after we're gone, which is really the key.
I love that. You're leaving behind the legacy that they can continue forward, the intellectual property that goes along with it, so they have the capacity to continue to scale. Fantastic.
Right. And I ultimately, I think my core belief is just when brands are successful and when they're, selling to the right people, supporting them in the right way, they're actually opening the units that they sold, that helps all of the franchise model do better and be better. I want to make sure that 20, 30, 40 years from now, when I'm retiring, that the legacy I've left is that there's been a betterment to the franchise model and that more brands have been successful instead of more brands really never getting to that 100 unit mark. I've just seen so many really well-intended, great founders with a great idea just not make it in franchising because there wasn't that level of support and knowledge sharing and help along the way that I think most of us in this industry could be providing in a better way.
I couldn't agree more, and I'm right locking step with you. When the day comes when it's time to retire, I want to be able to look backwards in the rearview mirror and say, I made a difference. And you certainly, and your team certainly are doing just that. I've heard and watched plenty of other podcasts and short clips and everything on your social channels, and I've heard the term pressure testing sales systems with real deals, and I absolutely love that phrase. For the audience, can you walk us through what that actually looks like in practice?
Yeah, so I think where a lot of brands tend to focus is on lead generation. And this idea that if I just widened my top of funnel, the conversions that we're getting will ultimately get me to the deals I need to sign for the budget we need to have and kind of the waterfall that happens thereafter with units open, units profitable, royalty stream, all of that. And I think where most brands aren't tracking well enough is through the rest of the pipeline. When we talk about building a sales engine, we're really focusing on the ability to have clear understanding on what exactly happens when someone comes in and predictable conversion from stage to stage. We also track time in each stage so that we understand, this brand should typically have somebody in the application stage for a week. If it's more than a week, then we've got some issue that we need to solve for, either with the candidates we're attracting or the team or the engine that we've built. And making sure that we understand, like, sales cycle is 62 days and every stage people are in this for this long, and that's the appropriate time for each stage. And that leads to this predictability and closing that so many brands are after and they can't quite achieve. I think when I think about pressure testing, it's understanding that once you have this engine built and you kind of have like this entire flywheel working for you, you can widen the funnel and it's not going to break. You can shrink the funnel and get really, really particular about the people that you're trying to attract or the markets that you're really trying to grow in. And you will still have very predictable growth because the engine is taking care of so much of that. That you can know if we shrink it down to, 30 leads a week, we're still going to close this many at the end of the month. If we open it up to 100 leads, that system is not going to break because you've built it in a way where no matter what that top of funnel looks like, it's still going to perform. I think where a lot of brands struggle is that when they're not closing deals, they immediately think about leads. Like, we got to get more leads. We got to engage with more brokers. We have to we have to spend more money on digital. And they don't think about, like, who's entering the pipeline? Why aren't they closing? What is it that we can make more efficient throughout that process? And oftentimes when you flood leads into a system that doesn't exist, you're really putting a ton of pressure on the person having to manage that whole system. I feel like it's one of the reasons why franchise development people don't last very long in brands, right? It's a high turnover position. They're under a ton of pressure to meet goals that maybe weren't based in fact or reality or weren't really budgeted out in a true fashion. And then they're under so much pressure because they have to really just have like drive and tenacity and grit to work within these broken systems. And it's usually not them who can fix it, right? It's not the salesperson who can figure out, how do I make this CRM more efficient, or how do I utilize this technology better? They're just focusing on, grin and bearing it and getting people through the pipeline as efficiently as possible.
Magical right there. Couldn't agree more. That's the vast difference between like creating a slide deck or a short webinar and actually running a live rep through a process where you build it, you run it, you stabilize it, and you hand it off. That's really, it seems to be y'all's model in terms of the flywheel you referenced. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, that's really it. And it's been over years and years of doing this and really walking in, again, from that operational lens, I think, which kind of changed the way that I looked at franchise development compared to my peers, of just saying, like, guys, there's got to be a better way to do this. There has to be an easier way. And even, before AI was the term that everybody was spouting from every channel, just basic technology, basic workflows, basic automation, where you're taking a lot of kind of the minutia and the follow-up off of that human so they can be more focused on where they're best, which is having human to human interactions over the phone or over Zoom or whatever it is in person. If you can free up your salesperson to be incredibly effective when they're in front of another human, and rely on technology and automation to do a lot of the back end work, that is an incredible thing to be able to do. And so much of what we've built is based on that. Like, we want the human to be doing the things that are most effective and move the needle the most, and not have to be, constantly catching up brokers on what happened on the last call, or remembering that they forgot to respond to that territory check that came in really late last night, or, kind of like advancing people manually through a pipeline and having to do that between calls that they have scheduled back to back all day long.
I love it. And I love the fact you brought up AI, because that's exactly where I want to go next. You said earlier your co-founders just have a ton of experience in reference to AI and automation. But when I talk to a lot of franchise brands, they hear the term automation or they hear the term AI, and they either think it's just going to take over the world, so I might as well ride along with it, or they just get overwhelmed and think it's just overbuying or overpaying for software. So what should the brands actually be thinking about when it comes to AI infrastructure?
Yeah, I think this has been really all over the board and really challenging. I used to do a lot of AI training, and I've given keynotes on kind of how to utilize Some of them were basic AI, right? Like the large language models and maybe some of the image generators, video generators, automation tools. When I think about AI and automation, I really focus on it creating clarity and not this idea of replacing the human. I am pretty like anti-tech theater where brands will tout, AI, drop certain large language models or brands, developers, and not actually be using it at all. I can't tell you how many people have gotten on my calendar to show me something cool that they built using AI. And then I jump on and I'm like, oh, that's not AI. It's actually a game that like me and my co-founders will play, especially at conferences where we're like, is it AI or is it not AI? Because now we can totally tell the difference. I think it's hard for brands to really get fully enmeshed if you don't have a developer or engineer on your team, frankly, because it's so easy to get distracted by this shiny thing. Like I was just talking to my team about Claudebot and everyone's buying the Apple minis and having all these agents just take over and do things in the background. It's actually like incredibly nerve-wracking and a little bit dangerous because most of the people who are stepping into this are not engineers and wouldn't know how to stop it if it went off kind of on its own and started doing things that you didn't agree to. We're lucky to have the team that we have. We do a lot with Claude code, and we do a lot with Anthropic's MCP. And so they're coding alongside AI, saving hours and hours and hours of work. But they're also, where I couldn't go and make sure that the code is correct because I don't know how to read it. Willem and Islam can look and be like, oh, it messed up here, it messed up there, I got to fix this. We're also not just letting, agentic AI go off in the background and do things without a human stopgap to say, I have to approve it. You have to stop this work at this point. So I think there's the people in franchising that are kind of all the way on the other side of the spectrum using Claudebot and Apple minis and maybe not knowing what they're doing. And then there's the folks that are like, I use AI every day. And it's because they're using ChatGPT to help them perfect an email they need to send. And that's really just barely scratching the surface. We use a lot of AI to help the CRM guide behavior. So really utilizing kind of like some human psychology and a if this, then that mindset. If the person said this, or if this activity happened, then we want this thing to happen as a result of that. We use AI to help us build really robust dashboards that inform leadership on what's going on. So we have these proprietary CEO dashboards, we call it. It tracks, broker activity, who's sending us the most territory checks, but they don't actually convert to intros. And what can I do about that? Who sends the most intros, but they never actually qualify or get very far in the pipeline? That's a message to me to say, I got to call Joe and educate him on what we're looking for in terms of a candidate. We track, full conversion rate for broker deals. We're tracking everything throughout the pipeline. We're tracking and pulling in website information. So a CEO can log into a central database. They never have to go into the CRM if they don't want to. And there's just a ton of information for them to sort through to get the answers that they need. And we really use AI and automation to just remove friction, which is the biggest holdup in a lot of deals. I tell people all the time, everybody knows the phrase time kills all deals. I really feel like it's waiting. Waiting kills all deals, right? It's like if the candidate's waiting for something, if the broker is waiting for something, or if you're waiting for something, that's a dangerous position to be in. If there's nothing happening during the waiting period, either you're helping them consume more information about the brand or watch a video or fill something else out, there has to be a little bit of that give and take in every stage of the pipeline, I think. AI can help us with so much of that because it can say, I saw Joe responded back to that validation intro to that franchisee, and we can probably guess that they scheduled a call. Let's go ahead and send him this email that has some videos of other franchisees talking about their experience to complement the conversation that might be coming soon. That's where AI and automation can become really powerful because it starts building a stronger engine behind the human who's doing a lot of the front-facing work. We still very firmly believe that humans need to close deals. AI is never going to be able to replace that human interaction and understand, human psychology, emotions, facial expressions, as much as it's trying to get there, I think there's just not, there's that irreplaceable human connection, even over virtual, that you can just read as a human, that I don't think AI will ever be able to replace. So we use it very selectively, and we obviously built our company using it, so we believe strongly in it, but using it responsibly, gating a lot of the information, keeping our brand safe is top priority, and making sure that IP and everything stays behind a certain gate that they can't have access to.
You said so many things right there that just made my head spin. I absolutely love it. But I couldn't agree more. I've talked to many brands. I'm not throwing any of them out on purpose. They're spending north six figures on tech or AI or something, and they couldn't tell me the cost per assigned franchisee or their lead to close time or their broker conversion rate for a specific brokerage firm. If you can't measure it, you can't improve it. If you can't improve it, you can't scale it. So I love it.
Yeah. And I think too, when brands are spending or researching different AI tools, really understanding how it's going to fully connect into the systems that you already have is so important. So like AI in of itself, just like out here, if you're like, we're going to give everybody access to ChatGPT, we're going to pay for the highest tier, it's going to be great, everybody's in it. But then you don't understand how it's going to fully connect into the system that you've built, the support, the project management, whatever. You're not helping your team understand how to use it well or how it's going to fully integrate. You're just giving them another thing to manage and figure out on their own. You're not going to see any kind of ROI on that. So I always tell brands, like, understand before you add any technology, including AI, what the goal is. What's the KPI? How are you going to measure like success of that tool? And how is it going to fully integrate in what you already have that probably works somewhat well? Or how are you going to build that system to be really robust with everything that you already have created within your brand? Because there are so many ways now to connect AI tools into your existing systems. There is a way to do it safely and a way to do it a little bit irresponsibly, but understanding that piece is so critical before you ever sign on or spend money on a tool. Especially one that promises, silver bullet success on whatever it is that you're trying to achieve.
Couldn't agree more. I know you emphasize, and I agree with you, but you emphasize broker alignment in the franchise sales space. Why does that matter so much in today's franchise environment?
Yeah, I mean, I think people have mixed feelings about brokers and consultants and kind of that whole world. And I think it's evolved a little bit over time. The reality that I kind of sit squarely in is that I believe broker networks can do a much better job than I will ever be able to do within any brand to attract kind of your typical C-suite executive, high level, corporate person looking to step out of that. That's not what they want to do. They don't want to live that life to retirement and then have kind of like a measly 401k to help them retire. They've read about entrepreneurship. They're interested in business ownership, and franchising seems like a great vehicle for that. Brokers and consultants will outperform me every single time attracting that person if that's a persona that I have for a brand. That allows me to then focus my own PR, marketing dollars, efforts, content marketing on the other personas that maybe a broker isn't likely going to attract. Sometimes they do, but I think brokers do a really good job with like that corporate refugee idea. So if that's a persona you're going for, working with consultants is a great way to achieve kind of that lead funnel being taken care of. It also allows you to not worry about, ads and headlines and meta tags to attract that person, because I will never outperform your ad spend. The other piece that's really important is I see so many brands who are like, I joined the network and it's not working. I'm like, well, you can't just like put your name on the list and expect the floodgates to open. Brokers don't know who you are. They don't know who your team is. They don't know what your system's like or how you support their people. And what I've learned, I have so many incredible broker relationships that I've built over the years with various brands that I've worked directly for, is that you all work really hard to attract that person, to nurture that person, and to get them to a point where you are now going to introduce them to a brand. You are putting a lot of trust into not just that salesperson, but that brand to kind of like not mess it up. Like I worked really hard this person is a warm lead, and I am trusting you, brand, to treat them really well and hopefully get them to a close, because you haven't made any money yet until that person closes. So you're spending a lot of time and energy and your own dollars to get that person to where they are now ready. And I respect that a ton, because I know what it's like, because I'm doing it at the same level, for brands typically. I also think just the relationship building, the trust building, the being in person. I know brokers who are really trying to do a great job and place really great people and change people's lives. A lot of the time, it just means that brands have to spend more one-on-one time with people. I tell a lot of brands, like, you need maybe 10 to 12 really solid brokers who totally believe in your brand, and you're set. You don't need hundreds. You don't need, most brands have pretty reasonable annual sales goals, and they're not expecting 100% of those deals to come from brokers. And so if you have like 10 to 12 people who know your brand incredibly well, trust the leadership team, know your salesperson, and believe it as an option for their people to be introduced to, you're set. You just have to build those relationships. And I think the other piece is, what I learned really early on is, every single touch point that you have with a broker matters. And so many brands let those opportunities just pass them on by. So something as simple as a territory check, when you just click the box and say available and send it on through, like, that's a missed opportunity to connect with that person who's considering introducing your brand to a candidate. Really early on, without knowing that it was anything different, I would fill out that like notes or additional notes or thoughts section so robustly. I would attach a map if it made sense, and really make sure that that touch point, that broker feels seen and heard and appreciated, even though it's just a territory check, right? And I might get 40 of those, and it's really exhausting to do. What we're building in our system is a way to respond to territory checks thoughtfully every single time, so that that human isn't necessarily having to like go to the mapping software and figure it out and get all the information and understand, we have one open and that franchisee is super successful and we'd love to have 4 more because they're not looking to expand yet. The other piece is the continued looping in of a broker as their lead works through your system. So our system automatically updates a broker. We use AI note takers, and it'll say, "Hey, Joe, had a great conversation with Beth. This is what we discussed. These are her next steps. These are my next steps. And our next call is scheduled for the 17th. That's just going out automatically. You will never have to stalk us down for updates on your lead to figure out like, hey, I've got a call with them tomorrow and I have no idea what's going on with them. That's like the worst type of email to get from a broker. You're like, I totally forgot to update them after the last call. The other thing I've learned too is brokers can be an incredible sales tool while that person's walking through the sales pipeline to be like, hey, Joe, I had to tell Beth some like not so great news that she was a little upset by. We can't do the thing that she's asking for. Can you, when you talk to her, kind of provide a different perspective on why that makes most sense? You can say, I haven't heard from them and they're kind of ghosting me. When is your next call? Can you ping her to see if she'll respond to you instead of me? And they can become a really great partner in getting that deal closed. And I think so many brands, they get the lead intro, they never loop in the broker. There's brokers who won't loop themselves in again, except to say, did you close the deal? I like to work with brokers that are just really engaged and really bought into the success of the intro that they've made. And we've built a system that works through that process automatically so that, again, the consultants are well informed and kept up to date, and they want to work with us because they know exactly what's happening every step of the way.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Obviously, speaking firsthand as a broker, I agree. There's 1,000 brands in our network, but there's like 25 that I pull out because I get the same questions from the 60 phone calls I do a day. Is I'm looking for semi-absentee, $150,000. I only want to work 10 to 15 hours a week, no retail. I'm like, okay, well, I got probably 400 options for you, but here's the 20 to 25 that I know are going to respond when I do a territory check quickly, are going to get on an intro call when I put it on their calendar, are going to give not only my potential client, but their potential franchisee the information and the structure to be able to move the deal forward so that I don't lose credibility with the next person. Exactly. So I couldn't agree more with everything you just said.
Yeah. And it's, I think a lot of brands expect they just expect to join a broker network and have it just open up. And they don't realize how much work it takes. And I think what we do in our foundational time is we recommend people work with at least a few broker channels and networks. And we build all the collateral and we build all the infrastructure and we build all of the tools that a broker would need to also be successful in introducing our brand or talking to somebody and feeling confident in talking about it without having to like quickly search for items or, a 2-minute drill that like kind of tells them what's happening, but isn't really all that robust. So that's part of what we're building as well.
I love it. I love it. I know you all are also very deeply focused on empowering diverse leaders within the franchising space. What are you seeing there, and where does the industry still need to grow in reference to that?
I love this question. I really believe that franchising and franchisees are all about long-term partnership. And they're not just these one-time transactions. I was lucky enough to work on the ops side for so long and support franchisees in the field, and really see firsthand how life-changing this can be for individuals. In the restaurant space, especially, there's a ton of legacy and, children and grandchildren taking over multi-unit, multi-brand organizations, and really it's life-changing. I think I care deeply about diversity in ownership. I'm very involved with the International Franchise Association and everything that they're trying to do to bring more diverse owners into franchising. And I talk a lot to leaders who are doing things even outside of IFA to attract and talk about franchise ownership with the communities that maybe haven't had access to capital, haven't had access to the education, haven't had access to even just like being in networking rooms and rubbing shoulders with certain people and having access to just like overseeing and understanding the franchise model. I think overall franchising is getting better. There's more, women owners than I've ever seen. There's more women in franchising than ever before. I think there's still a long way to go when it comes to that. And I think, I'm super involved with the Diversity Institute, and I love what they're doing with the Pathways program and the Ascension program. But to see more Black and Brown owners would be incredible. And I think, which is why I love kind of that Pathways program, because it brings kind of like franchising 101 training into these communities. I've been trying to set one up in Denver for a while with the team, because you can get into all of the diverse chambers of commerce. So whether it be the LGBTQ chamber of commerce, the Black Hispanic chambers of commerce, and get folks at least introduced to this idea of business ownership that they may never have heard of before, again, because of access. So I would love to see franchising continue to diversify. I would love to see funding options that really welcome folks who may not have traditional wealth and may not have, home ownership and some of the things that have really been a roadblock for people to get the funding that they need. And I, personally get really excited when somebody shows up on a call and they're female or Black or Brown, because I know how unique that is. So really care for those people differently, I think, than I might, especially just like holding them through the process, because it might be the first time that they're seeing it.
I love it. I love it. Diverse leadership is not like a nice to have. It's a strategic advantage, because different perspectives gives smarter territory expansion, better customer alignment, stronger unit economics, the ability to scale faster. Like, everybody wins in that type of a scenario. So I couldn't agree more, and I love that you're pushing behind.
And what's crazy is like the data is there, and it's been there for quite a while, that, having more women on your board, having more women on your C-suite, having diverse leadership within your organization, like profit margins are higher, revenue gets higher. I was just reading an article recently that was talking about female founder businesses and how overall they're generating more revenue in the first 12 to 24 months than the typical brands. So the data's all been there, which is why it's so interesting. I was talking to Allie Krause about this. She's the new incumbent chair for the Women's Franchise Committee. And we were just saying, like, when the data says so, why is it still so hard for people to actually like get on board with it? And I think there's a little bit of comfort and complacency and just like, this is what we've always done mentality. There are some brands that are just like really embracing it, and it's been cool to see.
Totally agree with you. More brands are embracing it every single day, and I love the fact that we're really pushing forward through Chamber of Commerce, committees, educational programs, all of those things, because that's how we continue to move the needle.
Yeah, and if you haven't looked at any of the, IFA Diversity Institute committees and councils, if you haven't heard of the Pathways program or the Ascension program, there's so many incredible ways to get involved if you have, background, experience, education, training, things that you can share. There's just a ton of ways now to get involved, which is really great because it gives people a platform within those spaces that maybe they wouldn't have had access to had it not existed.
I love that. And as long as they're cool with it, which I'm pretty sure they will be, everybody scroll down in the comments section. We will put links to all of those things so you can go check out those resources yourself as well.
Yes, absolutely.
I'd love to do like a handful of rapid fire style questions if that's okay and you still have a few more minutes.
Sure.
Awesome. What's one metric that every franchise brand should be tracking weekly?
Weekly? Sales activity per salesperson and deal.
Activity per person per deal. I love it. Accountability drives behavior. That's fantastic. A sales myth that needs to die in the franchising space.
Oh my gosh, that how many units you sold is a flex that you should talk about. I don't care how many you sold this year. I care how many are open, profitable, and happy franchise owners.
Couldn't agree more. Sales without some level of structure is just burnout that's disguised as growth. So fantastic. What's one thing that a franchise founder underestimates in franchise development?
How much franchise development, marketing, and operations need to be in lockstep? If those three people on your team are not best friends, if they're not talking and having regular touch bases and meetings, you're missing a big piece. If your ops team doesn't feel confident in your sales team closing and selling to the right people, if your salesperson isn't talking to your ops team about how those people are performing kind of post-open and understanding whether they were a good candidate, and if your marketing team doesn't understand if the leads are qualified and kind of what's happening on the top of funnel, then you're just missing out on a lot of synergy. And it's going to make your life so much easier if those three people are just key players and in lockstep with one another.
Couldn't agree more. Processes plus discipline equals scalability. You need it every time for everybody, for every role within the organization. Patti, this has been freaking outstanding. Like a masterclass in franchise sales, development, structure, AI, automation. Like the whole thing has been fantastic, I'm sure, for the audience, but for me as well. So thank you for taking time out of your day to share what your brand does, your experience, and everything that you do to help the franchise space continue to grow.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast spending time with you. And I'm just, excited to share this with folks, and hopefully they get some nuggets and some tidbits that they can take away and start applying.
I'm very confident that has occurred. So when the audience that's listening in wants to know even more beyond what's on this podcast, how do they reach out to you and your team?
Yeah, so our URL is probably one of the best ever. It's just www.franchise.dev. Makes it really easy to find us. I'm all over LinkedIn, super active, so feel free to find me there. If not, you can reach me at Patti@franchise.dev.
I love it. Scroll down, commentary. We will throw those in there as well, just in case you weren't able to write it down when she threw it out there. It'll take you a hyperlink right there so that you can get the information and you can therefore clarify where your needs are and how Patti and her team can help you close those gaps. So hopefully, for a fact, this episode hit home with some audience members. So share it with a founder who wasn't able to listen, because I know there's plenty of them out there that needs this specific type of strategic direction so that they can figure out their performance gaps and their operational gaps and be able to close them so that franchise brands across the board are able to scale. Thank you to everyone who listened. Sincerely appreciate you all. Continue to build strategically, scale intentionally, and exit powerfully. Thank you, everyone. Have a fantastic rest of your day.